Hello, my name is Yaya. Thank you for tuning into Trauma and God. I know from personal experience that healing from a black cloud of trauma is possible, but it takes time. Just as in nature, there's always sunlight behind a dark cloud. So it is for us. God is light, and He is always there. We just have to find Him. In this series, I talk about things that hinder us from finding light and things we can do that help us overcome obstacles. Today's topic is anger. Well, my father was a sexual predator who made me live in constant fear of him. My mother was a narcissist and could only handle her own bad choices by making them my fault, displacing them onto me. Trauma and being in a dysfunctional family often goes hand in hand. And dysfunction shapes our adult thinking in far more ways than we realize. I know it shaped mine terribly. As I keep talking about ways my parents and events have shaped my thinking, the more I discover even more ways in which my thinking was shaped by them. The great author and academic C.S. Lewis wrote, "I have learned now that those who speak about one's miseries usually hurt, but those who keep silent hurt more." The American Psychological Association says anger is an emotion characterized by antagonism towards someone or something you feel has deliberately done you wrong. Anger can be a good thing. In asking the question, what is the psychology behind anger? The website Psychology Today has an answer. Anger is often a reaction to and distraction from inner suffering, from feelings such as sadness, powerlessness, shame, anxiety, inadequacy, and isolation. Anger can be both an outgrowth of and meaningful distraction from the intense pain of underlying depression. So, what causes anger issues? Mind.org.uk says, those situations could include abuse, trauma, racism, or bullying, either as a child or more recently as an adult. This might mean that you now find some situations very difficult and more likely to make you angry. Well, I was never one that had the type of passive anger that takes it all in, internalizing and seething quietly. Oh, no. I'm quite the opposite. Sadly, I lashed out. When I first married, I hadn't learned a healthy and controlled way to respond to and handle my anger. Some people fear anger, but anger can be a normal, healthy emotion. Well, for me, it was anything but that. I was totally over the top. I was just flat out angry. I married a young man who had more patience and love for me than I deserved, far more than I deserved. He didn't get angry with me, frustrated, oh yes, many times, but never angry. He was, and still is, a safe person to be with. He was so safe, in fact, that it became easy to be angry with him because he never lashed out. Following my mother's bad example, I passed on the blame for the huge pain inside me to my husband by being angry at him. Well, after a while of blame passing, he finally said, "Enough. You've got to change. You are not angry with me, but your mother. Oh boy, did that make me absolutely furious. I argued that I had legitimate reasons as to why I was angry with him. I sulked a long while, and I couldn't see the wood for the trees. Well, then reason kicked in. I projected myself into the future and wondered what my life would look like if I continued on this destructive path. I knew it would end up not looking good. I speculated I would probably end up being all alone. Worse, for me, was the thought that I was doing to my husband just what my mother had done to me. I didn't like being blamed for her mistakes, so why should he be blamed for mine? In fact, it turned out that he was right. I had to change. Well, change is a quite easy word to pronounce. Change. But so hard to do. In my usual not so quiet way, I cried and shouted a great deal, saying how I wanted to change but didn't know what to replace my bad behavior and thoughts with. What does healthy even look like? I would shout. Tell me. Well, I wasn't arguing against the obvious. The obvious was to stop blaming him for my pain. No, the external thing of learning to keep my mouth shut and not verbalize him as the enemy was much easier to do than the internal changes I had to make. The problem was that my angry emotions were still there inside me. But now I no longer had an emotional outlet for them. I could no longer vent and blame him for my misery. No one carried my pain for me. I carried it myself, and it was crushing. Extreme pain motivated me to find help. Well, we had a small budget in those days, and money was tight, so I couldn't afford a counselor. It was also during the days when all information was found in books, a while ago. So I went to the library and took out books on the subject of emotional health and dealing with the past. I spent hours reading after the children were at school and the housework was done. The information I gleaned helped me to form, I suppose, a new framework for my emotions. We were part of a very vibrant church and I had lots of friends. My best friend was 10 years older than me. She was wise. She had experienced trauma herself. And she also loved being creative with me. And we spent a lot of time creating and talking together. I learned a great deal of common sense information on how to live from her. Stuff I hadn't learned from my mother. It greatly helped to talk about issues in my life that had made me so angry. But then being back in situations with my wider family who had been shaped as I'd been shaped was hard. They were not necessarily on the same path as me. And I would feel thrown back into the scenarios I tried so hard to not be affected by. I presume this is the same for all of us. Family has a way of getting under our skin more than any other relationships, and of throwing our emotions back into childhood turmoil. Well, after a while, we moved to a different continent, and this time we could afford counseling. And so started another phase of my healing process. I had by this time become more able to handle my anger and felt emotionally stronger in many ways. I was braver about expressing myself before I got to the boiling point. and I was able to explain what was going on in me. I was beginning to find my voice. I don't know if you struggle with anger, either repressing it or exploding. Let me just say that if you are struggling with anger, here's a start to help you on the healing journey. Remind yourself in those times when you're feeling angry that it's never okay to hurt others. Never. Take deep breaths and slowly breathe out, those sort of breaths. Ask for help when you have a problem. Ask for help. And take a break in a quiet room, or just say, I need space, when you need to have time alone. John Wesley was born in 1703. By the 1730s, he and his brother Charles were two students at Oxford University in England who gathered a group together to spread the Methodist movement. Their mother, Susanna, came from a family of 25 children. Oh my gosh. She gave birth to 19 children herself, of which only 10 survived their childhood. Needless to say, she struggled to find a quiet place to get away and pray. What she would do was bring her Bible to her favorite chair. She had already trained her children to know that when they saw her sit down in the chair and put her apron over her head, it meant that she was in prayer and not to be disturbed. She would keep this position for 2 hours every single day. This was Susanna's way of saying, space, please. What is your way of finding space when you need it? Or when you fail and you get angry, how do you feel? Well, I felt like all my years of counseling have been wasted. All my years of working hard to change my thoughts, my behavior, my attitude, everything had vanished, all gone. And I used to severely chastise myself with words like, I'm stupid, you're so worthless. Well, often in those times, my husband would step in and try to reassure me of his love despite my failure. We would laugh together when he frequently said, loving you is like pouring sand down a rat hole. Every time I say, I love you, it's never enough. Then he would tell me again how much he loved me. All I can say is that he continued to pour sand down my rat hole. He never gave up, and eventually the sand hit rock bottom and started filling up the hole in me. In the same way, when I fail, God keeps reassuring me of his love for me and that he's always there to help me. I can say that eventually, after all my years of trying to change, I have changed and I've reaped a great reward. It proves that nothing good or worth having is quick or easy to get. How we treat others is something we can control. Anger is something we can learn how to control. But finding the pain that is the source of our anger by digging deep inside ourselves is extremely hard and painful work. Anger is an expression of our pain. There are times when life stinks because we've been unjustly treated or belittled. Learning how to express legitimate anger in a constructive way can be very affirming and uplifting, but is equally hard to achieve. Yet it's so worth the struggle because peace, health, and emotional well-being are the result. Here's another great quote from C.S. Lewis. Pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Admit your anger. Discover your pain, and you can learn how to heal. It is so worth it in the long run. Please subscribe and tell others if you found this vlog helpful. You may email me, Yaya, at traumaandgod@gmail.com, or read my personal story, Snakes in the Loo, at Amazon Books. If this stirs things in you, please reach out and talk to a mental health professional. Help is also available at the following: Suicide and Crisis Helpline. Their number is 1-800-273-TALK. There's a Rape and Abuse and Incest National Helpline, 1-800-656-HOPE. God is for you, and so am I. I will be back next Thursday at 10. See you then.